Hello guys and gals and welcome to a new tutorial. Now if you're anything like me during this lockdown, you've probably spent an awful lot of your time trying to pay back a certain very little capitalist, Mr Tom Nook, and if you've been playing any Animal Crossing, you may be familiar with the cool little camera system in which the world is bent around itself. Now, we're going to be creating this using a material function, and it's actually very simple to create. And you can see here, as we move forwards, the world is unfolding in front of us. And if we were to turn around, you can see that it's going to work back the other way also. Now, this will work in any direction that we want it to work in. We don't have enough space here for it to work going the left and the right. But we're going to set this up, and I will show you a couple of different ways that we can do this so that we can have this working different ways in the editor so that we can still have our effect on or off while we're working in the engine so that we can still snap things together without having to do any guesswork. So, without further ado, let's get into it. But first, through the power of editing, I'm just going to make everything look flat again. There we are, as if by magic, everything's back to being nice and flat. Okay, so as I say, we're going to be doing this with a material function. The first way that we're going to do it is we're going to do it so that we can set this up with instanced materials. It's not the best way. We're also going to be using some material parameter collections later on. There are timestamps, so if you want to just jump to the piece that you think that you're going to need, go ahead and jump through it. It is important stuff to learn, though, as these skills can be placed into other places within the engine. So we're going to right click, head to materials and textures, material function, mf_nook camera. There we are, and I'm sticking with the Animal Crossing thing because I just can't help myself. There we are. So when you open this up, you're going to have a material function looking like this. Now, it's not going to look like a regular material. It's just going to give you an output result. Anything that we feed into here, we can then take back out again into a material later on. So, to get this working, what we need to do is we need to compare our object position to the position of our camera, and then use that distance as a mask to determine how far we're going to push the vertices to curve our world. So, knowing this, we can get ourselves a world position, which is the absolute world position of the object, and we can get a camera position world space, which will give us the camera position. Now, as I mentioned, we do need to get the distance between the two, and luckily there's a lovely node ready for us to use. So we'll plug those in, and then what we're going to do is, because we don't want this to be a flat value, we're just going to divide this to give us a little bit of extra control. So we're going to hold D and left click for a divide, and we'll plug the distance into the A. Now for the B, we're actually going to create a scalar parameter. So hold S and left click to create a parameter, and we're going to call this our distance. Ooh, only one S, thank you. There we are, distance. And we're going to default this to about 1.5. Now, like a regular material, we could just plug this straight in. However, we are going to be using an input so that we can change these should we need to in each one of our materials. So we'll right click and we'll just find input, and we'll get a function input, which isn't something that you're going to get in a regular material. We can plug our parameter value into the preview, and then we'll plug this into the distance. And you can see here our input type is a vector 3. We're only using a single value here. And what we're going to do is select our input and then just change the input type to a scalar parameter. We're also going to tick the little box that says use preview value as a default, and what this is going to do is it's going to make sure that the value that we've plugged into the preview is the value that's always going to be used at the start when we create a new material using this function. Okay, so we have a little bit of a mask going on. The next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to multiply, so hold M and left click for multiply, and we're going to multiply this by another scalar parameter. So we're just going to actually copy and paste these over, and we'll change the name of the parameter to the fall off, and we will change our inputs really quickly. We select the first one. The input name is also going to be distance, so we know what this is at the other end. And the second is our fall off, like so. We'll plug this into the B. We'll set our fall off to something quite low. We're going to say 0.01. And this is just going to help us to create a softer transition. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our values have a much larger range. And to get this larger range, we're actually going to use a power. So we'll hold E and left click for a power, and we'll plug the multiplier into the base, and we'll just leave the exponent at 2. And what this is going to do is it's going to make our values that are closer to 1 remain that high and push values closer and give us a nicer gradient between 0 and 1 based on the values that we're pushing into them. Now we need to tell it which way to go. So again, we're going to hold M and left click for a multiply, plug this into our A. And to get our direction, now if we were to look over here in the preview window, you can see we have X, Y, and Z. These are our coordinates and these are our directions. And you can see here they're all color coded, X, Y, Z, R, G, B. So we know that to move things up and down, we're going to want the Z value. But knowing that these are colors and that we have 3 coordinates, what we can do is we can use a color multiplied by our mask here to determine which direction to move. Now, to get our nice parameter color, hold V and left click. We'll get a vector parameter, and we're going to call this our direction. And we're just going to default the B value at -0.5. And normally, with a color, a negative value isn't going to give you anything. You're going to get some weird results, but because we're using this as a vector for a direction, it really doesn't matter what value we put in there. It's not going to affect a color at all. And again, we're just going to grab ourselves a input, plug this in, and change the value to a vector 3, and we will change its name to direction, like so. And we'll plug this into the B for our multiply, and then we'll plug that into our output result. Now we can press apply and save. We might get a little bit of time for this to compile, but it seems to be working quite well here. We'll just close that down. Now what we'll do is we're going to create a new material, and we're going to call this M_Nook camera, like so, and we're just going to open this guy up. There we are. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to bring our material function into the material. We can just grab it from the browser and drop it in. Now you can see we have all of our lovely parameters here, fall off, direction, and distance. And because they're lit up, this means that they have a default value, so we don't actually need to plug anything into these. What we can do is just take the result and plug this into the wall position offset. And then ta-da, magic things will happen. But we're also going to just give this a color because we don't want this to be black. So we're just going to change this to something, change it so there's something slightly different from what we had in the preview. We'll go with a nice kind of salmony pink, like so, and plug this into the base color, and then we'll just press apply and save, and then wait for it to compile. Okay, now we're all compiled. Now what we can do is we can close that down. We can right click our M_Nook camera and create a material instance. We can open this guy up. Now you can see because we set things up to have scalar parameters and we haven't plugged anything in, we get them by default inside of our instance. So we can just change our values directly in the instance without having to change our material function. So what we're going to do is we're just going to select everything that we want to apply this to. So in my case, I've just searched for static mesh in the world outliner, and I'm just going to select everything like so. And then under the materials here, we have display materials. I'm just going to put these in like so. Boop. And now you can see that it has curved our world. Now what we can do is we can test out these values by opening up our lovely little instance here. And we can change some of our distances. So we can say maybe we want it to go down even further by lowering the distance to make it a bit more dramatic. Obviously, you can see here we're going to get some funky points like so. And this is because it's moving the verts in relation to the mask. And obviously, if there's a low vert count, then it's going to look a little bit jagged. So if you want things to be really dramatic, you're going to need a higher poly count. So you can see here that this is just a little bit of a pain in the butt to work with. If we wanted to start building our world with this enabled, it's going to be really difficult to see what we're doing. So to make sure that we can do this and have this just running when we want it to play, we're going to change what we've done inside of the actual material function. We're not actually going to be using the scalar parameters. Now, the scalar parameters I've just showed you, they're a really, really cool way to do certain things. However, if we were to create ourselves a different material, for instance, let's close this down. If we wanted another instance here of our little nook, and we applied this to just these set of stairs, and we wanted slightly different values, get in there, all over the place. So we wanted this to be a little bit more dramatic. So then it's only going to update that one object or any objects that have this on. So say if we were to change the color of this one to green or whatever, we'd have to change each instance to make sure that they were updating all at the same time and correctly. We don't want to do that because it's a bit of a nightmare to mess with all of them. So instead, what we're going to do, we're just going to get rid of that instance, goodbye instance, and we're just going to reopen our material function. Now, let's just dock that where I want it. There we are. To change this around, we're no longer actually going to need most of this. We're actually going to change this into a parameter collection. So inside of a folder, right click, materials and textures, material parameter collection, and we'll call this MPC for material parameter collection underscore Nook camera. And now we'll open this up. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to create parameters and hold them inside of a separate entity. You can see we have scalar and vector parameters as options. And if we were to head into our material function, we are using 2 scalars and 1 vector. So we can add 2 scalars and 1 vector. Now we'll just open these all up and we will give them parameter names. So we know we need distance and we know that we need fall off. We also know that we need direction, like so. Now our default values, let's just check what we have inside of our material function. We have 1.5 and 0.01, so 1.5, 0.01, and in our direction we have to open this up. We can't use the color palette here, and we'll put 0.05 or negative 0.05. Now what we're going to do is we'll just press save on that really quick, make sure we have everything saved, is we're going to drag our material parameter collection into the function. Now that it's inside the function, what we can do is we can just say we don't want. We can just plug this directly in, like so. And again, we can make a copy and plug that in this multiply, and we can plug it into this multiply also. So we'll just move all of this out of the way. And you can see we're getting some errors, and the reason we're having errors is because we're currently selecting none. So we're going to change the parameter name, distance, fall off, direction, like so. And now what we can do is we can press apply, and that is going to give us exactly the same result as previously. However, it's going to be using our material parameter collection instead. You see, if we open up our instance here, the parameters are gone because we no longer have control of them inside of the instance. Instead, we can control them directly inside of the parameter collection. So if we look at our world, you can see that it's still lovely and curved, but if we change the collection, it will change it for us immediately, like so. And we can further prove this. So if we were to open up the Nook camera, get over to the right screen. Problem with having 3 screens. We can convert this to a parameter real quick, and we can call this color, and we'll press apply. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to make another instance just so that I can prove this to you in real time. So we'll create a material instance. We'll open this one up. And then what we'll do is we will make sure that our color on this guy is maybe a blue, like so. And we'll just select a few random objects in different locations, and we'll give it the blue. You can see that it's still folded over the way it should be. And now if we were to just change our, which window are we? There we are. If we were to change our collection here to 0, it will update all of them for us, instead of us having to go in and manually change each instance. There we go. Woo! He got through it. Round of applause. There we go. So there we are. And now for that tutorial, you all owe me about 700,000 bells, and if you don't, then I'm going to send Tom Nook after you, because that's the way that things work now, right? Oh, this lockdown has got me. It's got me bad. As usual, if you want to just download the project files directly, they are available to everybody on my Patreon. You can find links to the Patreon, the Discord, and my Twitter in the description below. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye-bye.